Hey, folks, welcome to the Generational Gap. I am Robert, your resident Gen Xer. Right over there, that's John. I'm trying to hit him in the head. John is, of course, our resident millennial. And right down there below us, I like saying that, we've got Jessica Green here tonight. Jessica, how are you doing this evening?
I'm great. How are you guys doing?
Pretty all right, moderately
Um,
neato.
uh, my,
Yeah.
my, my standard reply to that is now become 2020.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
2020.
Jeez.
That's how it's going.
Yeah. I don't think it could get weirder, but I don't want to say that because that's like an invitation to the fates to just
Oh,
Right.
come on.
pull the ripcord.
We've only scratched the surface of weird. I
Yeah.
mean, it's got nowhere to go but up from here.
Yeah.
We got what, like 4 more months and some
Yeah,
change of this
Yeah.
yeah,
year. Yeah, it's got
5,
time to
yeah.
get crazy.
Oh
And
yeah.
apparently there's going to be an election or something.
I don't know what you're talking about. Never heard
Seems
of
baffling to me.
it.
I see.
Yeah.
I see. We have Elephant Man in the house. He's upset that we have the lady on the bottom, and I'm like, hey, some everybody
It's
has their
Zeus
preferences for
deal.
position, right? Um, it's honestly not my fault. It was the order in which we came into the room. She was last into the room. I held the door for her. She's like, "Fuck you. I'm a
Well,
goddamn woman. I can open the damn door myself."
from my perspective, I'm on top. I'm on top of John.
Oh, there you go.
Kinky. I like that. See, it's all about perspective, Elephant Man.
That's
That's
right.
what it comes down to is perspective. John, how are
Fair.
you doing this evening? You said, yeah, yeah,
I
not.
said, I believe I said moderately neato and something else. I forget what the other thing I said.
And
Yeah,
you're going.
he's very non-committal, middle of the road answer.
Aren't you going to like a coronavirus hangout on the beach for a couple of days? You should be excited.
Yeah, I know. I am super excited.
Is it called Coronavirus Hangout?
No, but it is now. That's what I'm calling it now. Yeah.
He's like, I didn't realize there were going to be that many people there, but appropriately named.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, fair
If
enough.
any of you die, they're going to put that in the newspaper. They went to a coronavirus hangout and now they're all dead.
Hmm.
Oh, good. Well, then I expect all of you to buy a copy of that newspaper and hang it up on your wall somewhere, so that way it can be prominently displayed and viewed by anybody.
I'm
That
just
way, just my name lives on. Just remember me.
I'm just
Yeah,
gonna
remember
download.
me. That's all.
I'm gonna download the digital archive if that's okay. I don't feel like
That,
I'm
paying
that's
not
for
even
fine
going to go
paper.
too.
that far, man. I'm
I
sorry.
don't pay for papers. I'm just
Yeah.
it's one of those things. I have an issue. I like to save trees. Yeah, that's it.
Lame. What have trees
Is
ever
it?
done for us? Jeez.
Only the breathing, but that's not so important.
Ah,
If
it
there
gets in the
were
way.
if there were no trees, there would never have been an ark, and you would not have elephants. So there.
That's
Oh,
fair. That's fair. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Elephants are pretty cool.
they are. They
All right.
unfortunately there have been some reports that like massive die-offs of elephants are going on in Africa right now and they don't know why.
See,
I mean
they're
it's
tired of
Really?
this shit too. They're like, not another pandemic. Just all right, just tusk me. Tusk me. I'm just
Just
they're
that's
worried that it
crazy
might be
though.
something along those lines because they say the numbers are far higher than like poachers could do. So
Hmm.
really.
they're like doing these aerial views and it's just like fields of dead elephants and you're like, "Oh, that's not good."
Um okay, so that brings up an interesting question. By the way, I see Ed just showed up. He says you're early. I'm here, but on a run. We're not early. We're not.
Yeah, we're not
It's
early, guys.
8:30 on a
God,
Friday.
guys.
This is the. If you people would show up for the show on time and
Right,
come
no
to
wonder
it when
everyone
we're
shows up half
doing
an hour
it,
later.
right? It
I
was like I
barely
thought
got
the show
here.
was at 10:30. No, that's when
I
it ends. You assholes.
Wow.
Well, no, no,
I hope
no.
my
People I
husband's
see on the
drinking
street.
Yeah.
I hope my husband's drinking coffee because we're supposed to watch a movie tonight. So he better be awake at
Oh,
10:30.
What's the movie?
yeah.
We're gonna watch The Lighthouse. Willem Dafoe and Robert Pattinson.
Hmm.
I watch 100 horror movies from July 23rd to October 31st as a
Oh,
challenge.
awesome.
It's called the 100 Nights of Horror. So if anybody wants to get in on that, there's a Twitter account and a Facebook group for it. But tonight's movie is The Lighthouse. It came out in 2019. So if you haven't heard of it, it's because it is a very new horror movie. But it's on Amazon if anybody wants to get in on that.
Oh well,
Yes.
I might check that out because
Willem
I
Dafoe is a total creep too,
yeah
so it's going to be awesome.
the title sounds
Ooh.
familiar, but if it's got William Dafoe in it, Willem Dafoe is like the shiznit sometimes. I mean,
Yeah,
he kicks some ass in TV. Hey,
he's
but
a. It's a black and white too, which I
shut
think
up,
is kind of interesting. Yeah,
shut up.
yeah.
We've got color now, folks.
They wanted that
It's
feel.
yeah,
uh,
it's that retro look.
Yeah.
But yeah, since you're bringing up your 100 Nights of Horror, actually, right now would be a good time if you wanted to plug your stuff, all your other stuff.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So I'm running the horror movie group, which is a challenge that we do. It's called 100 Nights O Horror. I'm Irish, so O Horror. There's a Facebook group, and I just started a Twitter account for it today. But there's a schedule. You don't have to follow my schedule, but the whole challenge is that you watch a horror movie every night until Halloween night. And do you have the stomach to watch 100 horror movies in a row? I've never even completed the challenge. The furthest I've gotten is 57. It's difficult. It sounds easy. It's like, oh, all I got to do is watch movies, but it's actually hard to make the time for that kind of thing. So, yeah, if you guys want to get in on the fun, it's a really low stress thing. No politics, no virus, unless we're watching a movie that's got one in it. It's just kind of a break from everything that's going on. Oh, and
Yes.
I also have a YouTube channel. Check that
oh
out.
yeah.
So the Jessica Green Show, and I'm also doing a podcast for the 100 Nights Challenge. So you'll see episodes for that coming up.
Oh. Now,
Awesome.
so I take it it's against the rules to just marathon one day and knock out like 5 or 6 movies.
That's completely within the rules. The idea is to have fun. Sorry, to have fun. It's not to be stressful. So if it's easier for you to gather them all up on the weekend and binge or double header, whatever you want to do, the object is just between July 23rd and October 31st that you watch 100 movies. So it's not necessarily important what order you do it in. And it's also, you don't have to follow the list that I provide. I only provide that to make it easy because it's hard to hunt down 100 horror movies, you know? But you can substitute if you've seen a movie or it's a really hardcore movie you don't think you can handle. You can always substitute your own movies. It's just about having fun.
Yeah. See, now I figure with if you went the Friday the 13th and the Nightmare on Elm Street route, and go ahead and throw in the Halloweens, you could knock out. I think that would total somewhere around the 25 to 30 of your movies right there.
If you did the whole franchise, yeah,
Yes,
for sure.
because I've got all the Nightmare on Elm Streets, but I don't have the. I think I could do this. I could do this, but I
Once
don't
we
like
get
horror
closer,
movies.
Yeah.
once we get closer to Halloween, a lot more of those, like, because I think the 70s and 80s was like the golden age of horror.
Yeah, they were
So
pretty good.
toward the ending, I have a lot more of sort of those classic 80s and 70s horror films, a lot of which the Elm Street franchises and so on and so forth. But I've also got stuff in there from the 30s. I've got brand new movies that came out this year. So it's the whole gamut.
Can I assume that Night of the Living Dead is on the list?
It is, yeah.
Yeah, like
Yeah, definitely.
All the George Romero movies, right?
Well, not all of them, but
yeah,
there
don't
are.
go. Don't
Well,
get
I'm not saying they're all
the
good.
George
I'm just
Romero
saying that
movies.
I'm not saying they're all good. What I'm saying is they're at least on the list. I'm sure, you know.
If it is a cult classic, I usually try to include it. The group's favorite movie seems to be Army of Darkness.
Love it.
Right. So we started with that last night, and I think I've seen that movie 15 times, and it gets better every time.
Yes, I watched the Evil Dead series all 3 of them at least 3 to 5 times a year. Plus, I don't know if you know this or not, but they did a series, Ash versus the Evil Dead.
Yeah. I
Have
did
you
know
seen
about that. I have not seen it yet, but I did know about it. Yeah.
It is actually quite good. I was like, it's not as campy as I thought it would be, but it is campy enough to be Evil Dead franchise. Did a really good job on it, in my opinion.
Bruce Campbell is also so amazing too. He's just like a really physical actor. So he just makes that role. Unfortunately, someone had approached him about whether he was going to continue to play that role in future projects. He said that he was a little too old to do it now. And I mean, he's been playing Ash for 35, 40 years now.
Right.
So he retired. He's retired the jersey.
Right. That's and he did say that after in talking about the series, I heard a snippet basically along those lines. He was like, this was pushing the envelope. This was taking him to that place, finishing up, and because I can't keep doing this. And I think he even said he didn't want to like pass the torch on to somebody. He didn't say it in so many words, but I mean, how do you replace Bruce Campbell in that role?
Who could even try to play that role?
Now, John, have you seen those movies?
No, I'm not
Really?
I'm not a big horror guy. There's only a few horror movies I've seen. So if I recommend a horror movie, it's because it's really good.
What would you recommend? That's a really good horror movie.
One of my favorites, The Devil Inside, is really good.
Okay, yeah.
I like all the Paranormal Activity movies, but those are like, some people aren't big on those. But like, that's what I like in horror. It's just like those jump scares, like the suspense. You're expecting something rather than like the hack and slash kind of deals.
It got a little repetitive after the third one, though.
I agree.
Yeah.
The first one though was great, and I saw that in the theater. I was on the edge of my seat.
Freaked me out.
Oh yeah.
Much like The Hills Have Eyes. The Hills Have Eyes was one that really that one kind of freaked me out. Just
that was a really
just from the realism factor on that one, I was like, oh, I don't want to get lost in the fucking desert. Sorry, I don't want to do that anymore.
Yeah.
Drive somewhere.
Of disbelief, and you think that there really are probably some people like that in the hills.
Right. You can. I mean, my family growing up was from Arkansas. I totally believe it.
They got some weird stuff up in the holler. You don't want to go up there.
But I will say this, John, and I strongly recommend it. I have the movies if you want to borrow them. But the Evil Dead movies are. Think about it like it's kind of a cross between. I just for shits and giggles, I'll say it's kind of like a cross between Friday the 13th and Caddyshack. Like in that kind of
I feel good about that description.
That's not a bad one, right? Because there's plenty of blood and gore, but it's campy blood and gore. Like it's like I don't like watching
unbelievably campy,
right?
Gore.
But act so good in the acting department. Bruce Campbell just knocks it out of the park with it. I don't think he came into his own till the second one. But the first one still delivered.
My personal opinion is Army of Darkness is the best one of those. Just because of the boomstick speech. I have so often wondered how medieval people might react to modern things. And that is just like so artfully done and so like stupid and campy at the same time. I recommend Army of Darkness for sure.
Yeah, my favorite thing about the series that they did was he ran a hardware store. He had opened up a hardware store, and he did commercials on the TV, and all of them like had some sort of sexual innuendo about whatever product he was promoting or whatever sale or whatever. It was beautiful. You know how he delivers it because he's like Leisure Suit Larry. Think Leisure Suit Larry. That's the.
See, those were fun games.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I have two other ones that I really liked as well. I like The Others.
That was a good one. That was with Nicole Kidman.
Right? Yeah, that one's super good.
Good twist.
Yeah.
Good twist. Yeah.
And then The Strangers with Liz Taylor. Liz Taylor?
I've not seen that.
Taylor? Is it Liz Taylor or Liz Tyler?
Liv Tyler.
Liv Tyler.
Liv Tyler.
Right. Yeah, Liv
Tyler. That's my husband's crush.
Oh, then you guys will like that movie.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
She's kind of my crush too. If you want it.
I think she's
come and take it.
Crush. I mean,
yeah. Her as the elf princess.
It's the pointy ears. I mean, what do you do? Her ears are so perky.
Yeah. They shot her just a little bit slower than they shot everybody else to give her that like ethereal look. So that's why in that movie she seems like she's really got some kind of like magical essence about her, and they shot her just a little bit slower than they shot everybody else, which I thought was very clever.
I love when they do stuff. I don't know if you know this goes back to the 80s. One of Bruce Willis's first things, Moonlighting, the old series Moonlighting.
Oh yeah,
with him and Sybil Shepherd. Now they used to do a thing with Sybil Shepherd because to accent her, like they would do this diffused glow around her face. It was very subtle, but when you watch it, you look and it's like she's always glowing. Like she's always got this glow to her. And then, looking back now, when you can see all the effects from back in the day, you can tell they were washing her out a little, blowing her, just doing something to give her that glow and make her just sexy.
He did a Saturday Night Live about RuPaul's show, the Drag Race show.
Mhm.
And the joke was that everything around RuPaul was so blown out with light. And one of the contestants on the show in the bit goes, "Why do you look like a spooky ghost?" Because everything was so bright. And I just died because it's true. RuPaul definitely is in charge of the way that they are lit in that program.
Because, girl, friendly ghosts are too white.
Yeah. Why are you so blurry? You look like a spooky ghost.
They were blowing her 2020. Thanks, Michael Vega. I see Saint showing up. Michael Vega's in the house. They're throwing all sorts of things out here. Let's run through the list real quick. Let's see what we got. Jason X is for Chads. That makes sense. Children of the Corn, excellent movie.
Scared the pants off me.
Definitely a good psychological scare job. The first are pretty solid, to be honest. He's talking about the I think he's talking about the Evil Dead stuff. Yeah. Blair Witch, which was, I actually did not think Blair Witch was that bad.
I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I didn't fall for the hype. Like when it first came out, they were like, "Oh, this is an action." It was one of the first ones where it was actual footage kind of film, and they were like, "Oh, this was real." Right. I'm like,
they kept it vague too. When it first came out, they kept it vague to whether it actually was or not.
Yeah.
Yes. They really pushed for that. J. Edgar asked if Freddy versus Jason counts as horror. No.
I mean, it's in the genre, but it didn't make the list.
Right.
Yeah. Then we've got more action horror. Tales of Halloween. Tales of Halloween. I don't think I've heard of that. Elephant Man says The Blob. Now, the question is, which Blob? Do you go all the way back to the first Blob from, what was that, back in the 50s?
The one I saw was from the 80s.
Because there's an earlier one, and little known fact, one of the people in the bowling alley that the Blob is coming into in this one, Shirley Williams. Is it Shirley Williams? Yeah, from Laverne and Shirley, that played Shirley. She was an extra in that mob scene running out from the old 50s, 60s version of the Blob, the very original, the first original, which was actually a decent movie for its time.
That's a good little Easter egg too.
Yeah, if you haven't seen it, I strongly recommend go back to the original and check it out. Elephant Man offers up Bela Lugosi's Dracula and Frankenstein. Now, I have to say, in my opinion, I have never classified Dracula, Frankenstein, the Wolfman, the Mummy, the Invisible Man. I've never classified those as horror in my own mind. They were just monster movies, right?
I guess it is. I think that's a subgenre of the horror genre, wouldn't it be?
Oh, it's definitely horror. I just don't see them as horror, especially if you go back to my favorite Dracula was the one that Jack Palance played. Back in the 70s, 80s. I think it might have been the 80s. It was amazing, but they're not gory. It wasn't gory or anything like that. The older ones weren't really that much of that. So I never really saw those as horror.
Ooh,
well, they come from that romantic literature tradition.
Right.
So when you
there it
read
is.
The books, they're very literary, and it's not terrifying. But I imagine what was terrifying to Victorian people might be a little bit different than what it takes to terrify us.
Right.
So they probably thought it was scary as could be, but for us, it's kind of like, wordy.
Wordy.
Saint has thrown up Creep Show, which not a bad one. I like Creep Show. I didn't like the second Creep Show.
I have not seen Creep Show.
What?
I'm taking these down on the list, guys.
Damn well bet you got to watch Creep Show.
Yeah.
That was a fun one, actually. I really enjoyed that.
That might be on my list this year. Actually.
Don't get caught up in Creep Show 2 or the series. You're just wasting your time. But the first Creep Show, great.
Okay. I have vaguely think that it might be on my list this year. I can check that though. But yeah.
Michael Vega says Gothic Swag. Is that a movie or is he
I think he's
talking?
Oh,
the genre maybe for the old monster movies. Gothic Swag.
I don't know. He'll have to translate.
That's a good one. No, now there is one. And it was a really freaky fucking movie. Pardon my French. But it was more of a mind screw than anything else. And if I remember correctly, I want to say the movie was called Brain Damage. But
I don't know that one.
it was so weird because it was this guy, and through the whole movie he keeps like it's like he's going through his remembering his life, and then he wakes up in the middle of a surgery that they're performing on him, but then that is another dream he's actually having. But like they do this like 2 or 3 different times during the movie where he's waking up in the middle of this operation, but it all turns out to be a dream as you're going through, and you don't know at any point in time whether he's awake or if he's still in his head. And at the end of the movie, you're like, well, was he awake? Did he wake up?
That is my worst nightmare. The idea of being put under anesthetic and they're cutting on you and you are awake during it. That is literally like, I would rather jump off a cliff than experience that.
Anesthesia is probably one of the things that piques my anxiety. Just the thought of somebody putting me to sleep.
Yeah.
Because it just freaks me out. I don't even like going to sleep at night because I don't know I'm going to wake up.
I make a lot of eye contact with the anesthetologist, just like, hey man, do me good. I drink. Put me down.
Yeah.
I usually just tell them, I hope you enjoy that boat this is paying for.
Yeah.
You want to make friends with your anesthetologist. Make sure they like you. Be nice to them.
Now, Elephant Man says binge The Outer Limits from the early 90s. Yeah, I didn't love that Outer Limits as much as I did the original.
Outer Limits is good.
Yeah.
Like that's good horror, period. I don't have Creepshow on here. I think it was on a previous year, and then I didn't get to it because I've only gotten as far as 57. But yeah, that's one for next year's list for sure.
And Michael Vegas says, personally, I'm going to count the thriller The Invitation. Why does that sounds familiar? But
that's recent. That came out recent.
Yeah, it's on Netflix.
Oh, that is it. That's why I've seen the name of it. But he says it's on Netflix as horror and keeps you uncomfortable the whole time. Well, that's
the best. See, my thing isn't the jump scares; it's the psychological damage. So like, I think that's why I liked Lars von Trier's Antichrist so much. It's psychologically damaging. Like there's no like maybe 1 or 2 jump scares in it, and it's slow moving, but you walk away from that a damaged human being. And I don't know why I subject myself to that, but
well, see, that's and I know that I know it's kind of a mixed bag as far as whether people are a fan or not. But The Walking Dead did that to me. Like it left scars on me, mainly from like certain characters like Negan, when with the baseball bat, and I'm just like, how do you even fucking have yourself in a mindset to do something like that?
They spoiler alert, I guess, to anybody who's not familiar, but after they did Glenn like that, I dropped out. I was like, really? I can't get so emotionally invested in this character for 6 or 7 seasons and then watch their brains get like exploded all over the screen. Like I got upset for like the whole rest of the weekend. I was like, how could they do this to me? Like,
well, here's a tidbit for you. I've read the graphic novels before I ever saw the show.
Oh, okay.
Glenn had like 3 or 4 seasons extra in the show than he ever had in the books. He was dead much earlier in the books.
So he got a new lease on life.
Right. See, he got extra life out of the show. So, it wasn't that bad,
It's just,
everybody loved Glenn.
Love him. And then they tore him away from me. And I'm never going to get over it. I'm still in grief over it.
That's nothing compared to the outrage if they had gotten rid of
Daryl.
Daryl. Is there
the
name?
Everyone loves Daryl.
Yeah, like you can't get rid of Daryl.
That really kind of shows me that like America loves an underdog. Like we love somebody who brings themselves up from a low position. So it's like no matter how low you fall, we kind of want you to do good. Like we love nothing more than for someone on high to fall down, but we also like from someone on low to rise up. So I think that's the case with Daryl. Even his brother Merle, who is kind of a bastard character. That little bit at the end.
Oh, it was so sad that his final. Oh God, I was like, no, please don't make him do it.
You feel him as like a character, and you want him to. You're like, you want to be good, and I want you to be good, and then we should have known. They were getting us attached to him, so I should have known.
Yeah, those always tend to be my favorite characters, especially the ones that are just like, you think that they've had that redemption moment, and maybe 2 or 3 redemption moments, and then like right at the end they're like, yeah, fuck it, I'm an asshole. Oh, you shall live in infamy, sir. You shall live in infamy.
Or the way that we find villains charming. Like there's sort of a charm to villains that we like, and even actors, they get very excited to play baddies. And there's something we find so likable about evil people.
Right.
Like even Negan. I mean, he had this like huge female following of chicks who really thought who were into Negan.
But you have to admit, I think that it depends on the actor too. Right, the actor's got to sell something. Like Christopher Walken could play the shittiest fucking person, but people will be like, "It's Christopher Walken." I don't care how bad he is. It's like Harvey Keitel in The Bad Lieutenant. I mean,
oh man,
he was a real piece of shit.
Yeah,
real piece of shit. But so it all depends on the actor. Of course, another one that jumps to mind when I think about that is Kevin Spacey in The Usual Suspects.
Oh yeah, my God,
real evil, twisted fuck.
I was about to say poor Kevin Spacey, but what I mean is poor us, because he was a great actor that I really enjoyed, and then he turned out to be kind of gross. So not poor Kevin Spacey, but poor us.
Yeah, but just there is that part of that whole situation with him where it kind of came out that it was kind of a setup, kind of like not the situation wasn't all it was made out to be.
I mean that update
to the point, like from what I was reading and from the back and forth on it. They really shouldn't have killed him on House of Cards. They had taken him out of House of Cards. That was just an impulsive move. They went Roseanne Barr on him, and when it all washed out, the situation with this kid wasn't as black and white as everyone made it seem.
I also think that like he was definitely in that first wave of like, we're taking you all down, and like we don't need evidence. Hearsay is enough.
Yeah.
Hearsay is enough that I didn't even hear this update to the story.
Yeah.
I've just kind of been going around, fuck Kevin Spacey.
Yeah. No. I mean, and I've known Kevin Spacey was gay ever since Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil.
Oh, kind of ironic. That role, when you look back on it, is kind of ironic.
Right. Absolutely. Right. But it's one of those things where he really got shafted on that. Now, did you watch House of Cards with him in it?
I watched the first 2 seasons of it and thought it was great, but it didn't hold my interest enough to come back. So
it was a little tricky, and did it start to feel repetitive to you? Mm-hmm. Is that what it was?
It's like too close to reality. It was just showing that like gritty, nasty thing that you already know are going on in Washington, and I got kind of a bad taste. Like, I don't want to watch this for entertainment.
Yeah. I tried to convince John that he needs to check it out because I think he would really enjoy it, just from the standpoint of what you said, that gritty realism where you're like, this could literally be going on in Washington right now.
People in Washington made commentary as to how close it was to the reality that they actually experienced.
Yeah. I used to say that I thought it was an expose of the Clintons.
Yeah. I mean, Robin Wright is obviously playing Hillary Clinton. Like, there's no getting around that.
It's not hard to see, is it? Except attractive. Right?
Except super hot, yeah.
It's okay when she does a topless scene. I'm just saying.
She fills out those pantsuits. That's all I'm gonna say.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't know. Like, Hillary had a booty back in the 90s. I'm just saying, like.
But
I don't know. 90s Hillary was all right.
I was really hoping that with that series we were going to actually find out that Frank Underwood was actually the Underwood Devil.
The Underwood Devil.
Underwood Deviled Ham is kind of a joke, but I thought they were going to build him up to be, he was actually going to be like the Antichrist or Satan.
Oh, right. Like they reveal behind the curtain and he takes the human mask off.
Basically,
or something.
yeah, like
right.
Because the evil that he was doing was just like, I'm like, this is some shit right here.
And I think that's probably somewhat close to reality, because you peel back the veneer in any of these like power structures or money structures, and it's just like the hell screams from Event Horizon come out, and like you just have to shut it to remain sane. Right. And that's what the feeling I started to get while watching this was like, this is not okay. I shouldn't watch this for entertainment. This is a little too close to reality. Like, and with Miss Maxwell under custody, we may end up finding out that some of this shit is quite close to reality.
Yeah. I'm just saying. Yeah. That's why I say, John, like you hear all these conspiracy theories and all this bullshit that's talked about Hillary and stuff. I'm like, watch House of Cards. Watch House of Cards. It's like watching it in real life, like watching it happen. You get to see behind the scenes. It's like behind the scenes.
I will give you this. The first 2 seasons are phenomenally acted by everyone involved. The script is phenomenal and the plot turns are great. So like, it is good. It's super good. But after about the second season, you get that ick. And you're like, I don't feel good about this anymore. I need to go pray, wash.
But would you agree that it's like an excellent example of 4D chess?
Oh man, I mean, yeah, right. That's the scary part. That's the scary part, is that this is probably what it is.
Right, it's just insane.
Who are we willing to kill in order to enact our vision of reality?
Exactly. Yeah. Oof. Well, now there's a list. Should we start that list now?
Not out loud.
Let's see. Do we have any other good suggestions? Saint put out there Omen. I'm just going to put, if you don't have Omen, Damien Omen 2, and The Final Conflict on your list of horror movies, those are some of the 3 best horror movies ever. Like
the was trilogy. On our 2018 list, but it's not on the current list, but it has been on the challenge before.
What about just the one? Because they did
just the original Omen,
Because they did Omen, and they did Damien Omen 2, where he's in the middle of his life, and then they do the final Omen, the Final Conflict, where he actually comes to his own as the Antichrist in power. So
that
they show
awesome.
the 3 movies show the entire rise of the Antichrist.
Okay.
And I'm like, they freaked. Not only did the first one freak me out, but the other 2. I mean, again, one of those things, much like The Walking Dead to me, you get to see, you start thinking about these realities. Because when I saw Omen, I was still a Catholic, and I was like, oh.
You have a Catholic upbringing too, so when you get involved, when you get that like demonology stuff, there's a little ring of truth in my heart that scares me, because I'm like, oh, this could be real.
That's what I like so much about The Devil Inside, because it was all exorcisms and just like possessions and the things that demons can do and stuff. It was really cool.
I felt like that one, The Devil Inside, I feel like is on the list this year. Because that one got requested a lot, and I haven't seen it. I haven't even seen the preview for that.
Good. But you gotta, you gotta make that one of the ones that you watch. I don't know if you're gonna make it to the 100, but make sure it's one of the 57 or
Right.
That one's really good.
I have a good feeling about this year.
I will say it's a shame that it's movies, because I would have to say on my list of favorite horror things to watch is the first season of American Horror Story.
Oh, so good.
Right?
Yes. It's not a movie, so it can't go on the list, but
right.
It's phenomenal.
How was that for your freak level?
And I loved that they kept all the same actors, but the next season they completely changed the story.
Yes.
And I was like, this reminds me of the Comedy dell'arte that they used, like actors would just know their role and then they could go from thing to thing. And it's almost like a classic type of theater.
Yes. The only thing I didn't like about it, like I think the first 2 or 3 seasons I was okay with, but it was when they started doing like the coven and they started bringing witches in and all of this, and I was like, okay, now you're just doing horror gratuitously
Problem.
with a witch theme. Is that your Corona cough, or are you just drinking
Yeah.
beer too fast?
It's my hooligan cough.
Hooligan.
Hooligan.
Yeah.
Is that a beer?
Is it?
Is
Yeah,
that
it's called hooligan. It says for rebellious and unruly sorts.
I'm
Oh,
sure it
God.
doesn't. Does it come in anything smaller than a 40?
No, they have big cans of it too though, but I'm not trash.
Just what every hooligan needs.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean, I don't know. You're still drinking out of a can, though.
It's
I don't know.
true.
Where I come from, that's
That's
the good old boys.
hey.
Little trashy.
I grew up on cans. I grew up on
Yeah,
cans.
no, I mean, how else do you make BB gun targets?
The only
Beer
ones that
cans.
weren't in cans were the what was it? The little, remember the little Miller High Life ponies?
The High Life, yeah.
Mhm.
The little High Life ponies. And my grandmother used to drink this. She was an alcoholic, like a raging alcoholic. She'd drink a case of beer a day, but she used to drink this beer. It was called Brown Derby. And it was like a little barrel-looking bottle, brown barrel-looking bottle, and it had these caps. You twist the cap off, and I think this is the only reason why she liked to drink. And they'd have a rebus under the cap. It was a
Oh.
beer, and there was a rebus under there. And so you'd have to, she'd collect all these caps and put them in a box. It had all these rebuses on them. And is that
Wow.
why you drink this beer? Besides the fact that you're a fucking lunatic alcoholic, just so you can look at the pretty rebuses?
It reminds me a little bit of the Camel Bucks.
Mhm.
Like you used to be able to get like points or money with your cigarettes, and then
Oh,
you
yeah.
could save up, and then you get like a fanny pack or some shit like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, some
Friend who
stupid
had like
shit.
towers of cigarette packs in his because he was saving up for this fanny pack, and I'm like, dude.
You know, you can get one for $5 at the flea market.
Right.
I
It's so stupid.
But it won't have that big dick-looking nose on it.
I'm sure you can go to camel.com or whatever their website is, and I'm sure you can go to their merch store and you can buy the fanny pack. I'm sure you can.
I'm sure you
Really
know.
want that one.
You'd rather have lungs. I don't know.
Yeah.
Right? That whole thing reminded me of the S&H green stamps that my grandmother used to collect. I don't know. Have you ever
Okay.
heard of those S&H green stamps?
No.
Yeah, you would go to stores and you'd buy stuff, and some of the stores would give you they had these these little stamps, and they would give you a certain number of stamps depending on how much you would spend. You take them home, and you had these stamp booklets, and if you filled the books, you could buy stuff with the books of stamps that you had gotten for your purchases. And so she would send off to S&H and get
Kind of
stupid
reminds
shit
me of
like that.
like the ration stamp books, where like if you wanted to get a new pair of shoes, you would have to like collect up your ration stamps into this little book until you had enough. But you had to forgo like bacon and butter and cheese and other
Yeah.
shit so that you could get shoes.
So how
'cause-
were the 1920s for you? What the hell are you doing? How do you remember that?
Well, I actually like food history is something that I study in depth, and part of that is like the Depression era and war rationing and stuff like that. And they had a lot of unique ways of getting around the lack of, like, they couldn't get butter, for example.
Mhm.
And so a lot of the recipes would be really creative about the different types of things that they would use in place of butter. And most families could only get about a pound of meat per week. So the way that you would distribute this pound of meat, like I can eat a pound of meat in a meal, one meal in the day.
Easily.
So imagining spreading a pound of meat out between a whole family over a week, you have to get pretty creative. So one example of the way that they would get creative with the meat is called war steaks. And you would mix the meat with shredded potato and shredded onion, and you would make these kind of like Salisbury steak type things. They're really good. So they had to be creative, but they didn't skimp on taste. It was still really clever what these housewives were able to come up with in order to feed their families. So it's just kind of a subject I think is interesting. And my whole shtick or my brand or whatever is libertarian kitchen witch. So I study like domestic history.
Fucking libertarians, I swear to God.
I know. I'm not a real libertarian.
Yeah,
I've been
no
told. So if that puts your mind at ease.
Are any of you? I mean,
I
really,
am.
just ask
I'm the
yourself.
only one. I'm the only one. Yeah.
The only real libertarian is the one you're talking to at that moment. The rest of them aren't.
Exactly.
And actually, you said something today, John,
I did.
after
Discord.
the comment I made, and I'm like, wait a minute, we're talking about two different things because you pronounced yourself the true libertarian, right?
Yes,
but I was talking about
Yeah.
liberalism. There's a difference. There's
Like,
No, someone else was
classical
mentioning
liberalism.
Someone else was mentioning libertarian.
Yeah.
Or no, it was it was the commissioner of roads. He was talking about how everyone else is a status cuck, and I was like, no, I am the one true libertarian. All the rest of you are status cucks. Like I was just kind of doing that.
The
Yeah.
commissioner of roads. That's pretty good.
No, but
There's a long story behind that.
Unless you hate the roads.
Right, so. You have to hate the roads. Yeah. Fucking hoe-ass roads, man.
Fuck these hoe-ass roads.
Fuck roads. Give me a horse and carriage.
Right.
All I need is dirt.
I'll ride
my lawnmower to Walmart. I don't care.
I would too.
I would, yeah, I would do it. I just need to get a lawnmower and a
people used to do that because I lived in a small town in Oklahoma. People do that. They were going downtown. Oh, yeah. They were going into town to get something from the general store. You'd see them rolling down the road in their fucking tractor. They didn't even buy. They just happened to be out doing shit with their tractor. Like, fucking, I'm going to the store. I'll take the tractor.
Yeah.
Like,
you're already on it. It's probably a diesel tractor. You know, you're not going to turn it off. You got to just keep going.
They can only go so fast, these tractors. So when they're on the road, there'll be like a line of cars behind them.
Yep.
Like, oh, we got to wait. They're calling each other on the phone going, I've got 10 behind me. Like, they're bragging about it, these bastards.
See, but back in the day, the guy on the tractor that was holding up some cars, he was always really good about letting you know, come on around. He was always
they're
good.
Bastards now.
They were always good about that. Old man Ballard would actually pull his off to the side and run in the ditch so cars could go by him. He was a good man.
God bless you. Old man
Right.
But no, I let me get your take on this, Jessica. I posited this out in in Discord today because I'm starting to be a believer in this. I believe that between millennials and Gen Z, they have created the current left that we have. They killed liberalism. Like, liberalism is dead. I could sit here and tell you I'm a liberal all day long, and it's like, what does that mean? That's nothing anymore. That's used to it was just hey, we want less war and free legal weed. That was being a liberal, right? That was being on the left.
Well, it also used to mean that you believed in freedom of speech and you believed in freedom of assembly and all of those types of things, but those are now right-wing values, apparently.
Right, because but I'm beginning to get this feeling, ready to lay the blame at the feet of many millennials and most of Gen Z for what the left has become now, and it's not helped by our illustrious leader.
No. I am one of those millennials that is absolutely to blame for this, and I take full responsibility for that because in 2011 to 2013, when all of this stuff was, you can map the mentions of these kind of like woke ideologies being mentioned across the internet and Facebook and Twitter and things like that. And I used a considerable Facebook following to spread these woke ideas because I thought it was the right thing to do at the time. And I look back on the monster that I helped create with a great deal of shame. Because my values, the values of freedom of speech and anti-war and things like that, have been left by the wayside. People seeking, values that I don't recognize as liberal values. And it's gotten really far away from me. It picked up its skirts and ran so far left that I couldn't track it any longer. But I did help create that beast, and I apologize to everyone.
So I accept your apology.
Thank you. It makes me feel better.
Only because I came from a similar thing, except for more recently. I was pretty apolitical until about maybe 2015. I would say that's probably accurate, yeah. And then I was like a Bernie bro until after the election, yeah. And then, but I started seeing, and being part of lefty circles, you get to start seeing the mask completely off because they're not out there worrying about optics.
Mhm.
Not that they care anymore, but at the time, it was all, we believe this over here, but then when we're all together, it's something completely different. Um, but I did want to mention that liberalism in itself is not an ideology, but it's an umbrella term of different like Enlightenment ideologies.
Mhm.
So to say
Yeah,
like libertarianism is a subset of liberalism
Mhm.
because it comes
I
from the
agree with
same
that.
school of thought. So I wouldn't say that liberalism is dead. I think the word just has no meaning anymore because
We could go.
people on the
I
right
could
will
see that.
call anyone on the left a liberal, even though they're obviously not. Um,
But how many words have been beaten to death? I mean,
oh, tons, yeah,
racism, sexism,
yeah,
any ism has been so beaten to death with overuse that they literally mean everybody and nobody simultaneously. So, I
yeah,
mean, what is liberal? I
To be
mean,
honest with you, I
right,
think liberal is middle of the road.
yeah.
Like like the center of the spectrum now is the liberal. Because you've got to have, even if you start swinging to the right, you've got to open up and have some liberal mindset about some of the things that go on.
Mhm.
Just as you would going towards the other direction. Yeah, I mean, now I'm just like, okay, so we're just fence posters now. I mean, we're just, we ride the fence in the middle because, everybody's so extreme on either side now. It's like, oh, and it's getting more extreme.
yeah,
I don't know. I've been talking for a while about the boot. The boot is going to have to come down.
Yeah.
It's coming down. I don't know if you've noticed this, but
mm-hmm,
like we know that in Portland, right? We've got federal agents in Portland now
Mhm.
bringing boot, right?
Yep.
Well, Trump has made an announcement in the last couple of days that he's got quite a few thousand more he's planning on dispersing all around the country to
yeah,
target these.
Yeah.
And this is the part that gets me is the politicizing of it. They're primarily targeting Democratic run states and
Mhm.
locations, right? It's to fix what the Democrats have fucked up. Um,
Well, I mean, it's because Democrats usually run cities, and cities are hotbeds for this sort of activity.
Yeah.
Leftist basically is what cities are all about. So it makes sense that those would just so happen to be in those in those places. I
The
don't think
left
it's some kind of like thing that Trump's trying to do.
no.
You know,
He
the
literally said he's planning on sending federal
yeah. No, I
agents
know.
out to
Mhm.
these cities, like in the
Right.
thousands.
Right. No, I know
The
that. I'm
boot is
saying I know.
coming.
Right.
Yeah,
I'm just saying I
and
don't
at
think.
that
Oh, go
point,
ahead. Go
when
ahead.
when they're throwing explosives, they're no longer protesters. Like you are in open warfare against the United States at that point.
Right. There was an
Yeah.
article that about Portland. I think it was today or yesterday. And then what was the headline? Folks in Portland are saying they're not sure that that these riot this these riots and protests are actually still representing Black Lives Matter voices anymore. It's like you think
Oh,
we need
Yeah. No
welcome
shit.
to the party, pal.
right,
Right. We were
right.
saying that 3 weeks ago. We were saying like, come on,
Again, the
man.
show starts at 8:30, folks. Catch up.
Yeah. Get here on time, man. Like, no.
I've been on board with that since the
Oh,
first target went down. I'm just
yeah.
saying.
Oh, when
And
they got
that is the point. Are you supposed to leave the people that live in those cities to the whims of these so-called protesters? I have a lot of people like on my Facebook feed who will say, "Oh, they're using federal troops and tear gas against people who all they're doing is graffitiing." And I'm like, "Okay, you're willfully ignoring what's happening because these people are
yeah.
throwing explosives, they're lighting shit on fire, they're beating people's heads in. They are in
Right.
open warfare with the United States government." Now, I'm not a fan of the United States government, so I'm not saying that like I support them or anything like
Of
that,
course.
but you
Yeah.
have declared war on a militaristic government. What do you think is going to happen?
Well,
Like this,
nothing's happened up to this point. I think that's why they think nothing's going to happen.
what
Well,
and that is the
but it's
fault of the
starting
leader.
to happen.
Hmm.
That's the
The leaders
thing.
in those communities have failed them in a great regard that they've let this go on for so long.
Oh
So
yeah.
now what's going to happen is people who are going to come in there who don't give a shit whether you live or die, like are perfectly willing to execute the order to clear you out no matter what that order
Right.
entails. And these people, their whole ideology is by any means necessary.
Yeah.
You're not the only one who applies that to the job that you do.
Right.
Others do well, and they're going to do it to you. And I'm sorry, but you're getting a little bit of taste of the government that you would enact on me if you had any power. So pardon me if I don't tear my hair and gnash my teeth about,
Right. I love those people who are like, where are the pro Second Amendment, libertarians now, huh? Where are they now? It's like,
you got me fired.
Yeah, we've been telling you for years to, arm up, fucking stop being statists. We've been telling you for years, you laugh at us, and then now when you want us, it's like,
so you don't agree with the idea that there are people in Portland right now playing the victim card because the federal government is starting to step in, right?
No, they're not victims. They're not victims. Once you start throwing explosives, you're declaring war. You're a soldier.
Right.
You're not a victim. You're not a protester.
I mean,
protesters, you operate as part of the community of the United States or whatever it is, that you're part of this thing.
Right. A peaceful protest.
Declared that they're not part of this thing. They want to burn it to the ground.
Right.
So that to me is a declaration of war.
I mean, to make it even simpler, lost my train of thought because of that. I was thinking about something else. No, you were saying, declaring war. Oh, yeah. Okay. So, they're not victims. That's what I was going back to. They're not victims once they've already violated someone else's rights. And property rights are rights. Once you violated those property rights, you cannot be victimized. Your rights are forfeit. That's on you.
That's absolutely correct.
Yeah.
They've murdered people.
Right. What is it, like 28 or something like that?
Yeah, I wasn't sure of the number, but
I think something like that. Yeah.
And do you not find it ironic that throughout all of this, mostly what you see blown up in the media, or especially from the left, a lot, I'm sure, is police violence during these protests and riots, right? You see so much of this. Well, look at what the police are doing in this situation. Look what they're doing. I'm like, okay, what about that store owner that's laying on the ground, just got kicked the shit out of him by 12 people?
Did his life matter?
Right? But the police are being brutal. The police are being brutal in this.
I gotta give a shout out to my girl Kaylee. She's the press secretary for Donald Trump right now. She got up and she put a video of what's actually happening. The burnings, the beatings. They have a woman walking alongside police going, I hope your whole family gets killed. I hope your house gets burned down with your whole family in it. I can't wait for that moment. And she showed that on national television in front of all of these press people, and not of one of them brought up peaceful protesting during the rest of that press conference. And I was like, that girl shut you down.
Yeah.
She's an absolute queen. And she works for the state. Don't get me wrong, I'm not a fan, but her skills are apparent because she shut that argument down completely.
Okay, so I'm sitting here with two libertarians, and I have to ask this question.
One libertarian.
Technically an anarchist in the libertarian vein, but that's
okay.
Well, yeah.
You said something about it earlier, so I'm going with that.
Yeah, if you want to distill it, then I'm a minarchist. That kind of I mean, it's libertarianism. It's all.
I'm an individual.
Yeah. All right. No. I mean, there's a bunch of stupid assholes like me. Don't get me wrong. I'm just technically.
Actually. Okay. So I listened to you in agreement that something needs to be done in these situations, but I'm going to put this out there. This is your federal government coming in and bringing law and order in. Not in just one place, but with the expectation that they're going to do this various places throughout the country.
Right.
Now, we are not stupid children. We understand that the moment this begins, that is opening the door to a level of authoritarian rule that we may or may not be able to comprehend because, of course, we don't know how it's going to progress. But we have a pretty good idea that with that open door, we always hit a slippery slope. So where do the two of you stand on this idea that right now, this is in actuality the boot beginning to descend, and will it be lifted once this stops?
And
are you okay with it?
Sure, I'll go first. So I've said because you've asked me this and similar questions several times throughout this whole, I guess ordeal, and I think I've answered differently every time.
You have.
So I'm going to answer differently yet again. Because I don't like the idea of the federal government sending not troops, but agents, law enforcement into a city or a state in general, while the governor slash mayor has the capacity to stop it themselves. Now they do have the capacity; they've just failed to do so. So I say just let the cities burn for now, until the people who are not being violent put pressure on the mayor slash governor to actually do something about it.
It would be my preference that people took a rooftop Korean stance and would use their firearms to protect their businesses and to protect their homes. As soon as people started shooting back, these protests would break up pretty damn fast. But because the people of these areas have elected to be unarmed and rely on their government, now they're in a position where a gigantic authoritarian boot is going to come down and have to deal with this. And no, it's never going to pick back up. But my argument would be that was never not the case. Just because they weren't deploying it previously doesn't mean that it was never an option. It was always an option. They have set many precedents for using unimaginable violence on, for example, Ruby Ridge, for example, Waco. They have absolutely availed themselves of the fire and staff to deal with malcontents. So that door for me, in my opinion, has always been swinging wide open. And in fact, they blew it apart. They blew that door apart and then they lost it, as was the case with Waco. So now in communities such as the one that I live in rural Georgia, if they tried to pull that bullshit here, people would gun them down. They would ventilate these people because you're not gonna do that here. And I think that's an effect of the people who have elected to remain unarmed. You say gun-free zone. That's what you get in a gun-free zone. And I bet if you took a Venn diagram of gun-free zones and zones that are filled with fire and protesters right now, they're gonna almost be a circle. So, my contention on that is I would rather an armed populace stand up for themselves. And that means you have to get your hands dirty, that you can't pay the state. You can't, what was the word I was looking for? You can't pass your violence on to someone else. Life is messy and hard, and sometimes you have to protect what's yours. And you can't just pass that off onto officials, or they're going to use it for the absolute worst means possible.
Right.
And so that's kind of my take on it. Was door already open long before now?
Well,
let me ask this about you real quick. While you were still a lefty, did you have that cognitive dissonance of I hate the government, yet I want them to have a lot more power?
So I did not. I always considered like war a bad thing and police violence to be a bad thing.
Of course.
But I did not connect in my mind how creating a socialist welfare state would be empowering those things.
Gotcha.
That to me, there was no connection there. And that connection didn't happen for me until after 2016.
Now, see.
Fair enough then.
Now, see, when you talk about that door already being open, like you mentioned Ruby Ridge, you mentioned Waco, and there are other incidents. My problem is I see those as incidental. Like those were just moments in time that needed to be handled. So, I quantify those in the realm of something like 9/11. Those were, terroristic situations. But you understand what I'm saying? Like those are under the umbrella of like dissidents against the United States. These kind of things, like where you're, I always imagine that
Yellen needed to show off this new, tough on gun stance.
Sure.
But it otherwise would not have happened. It's just the willful violence of the state, that created that situation, not necessarily the terrorism of the Branch Davidians, who, while creepy, don't get me wrong, creepy, but not a threat.
He hadn't
Right.
done anything wrong.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure. And you know, we could sit and we could go back and forth on the validity of those situations, but again, they wind up being incidental in my mind versus this situation now. This is not incidental. This is the kind of situation where it's not just opening the door, you're kind of inviting them in to come in and set up shop. I mean, because that's what they'll do. You give them an inch and they'll take a mile, right?
Mhm.
So, you know, I'm worried about the long-term aspects of their presence in these locations and how they spread that, and if this is not actually like the response to the George Floyd situation is going to be necessary, but also prompts the boog.
Yeah. So about the boog, I have some things to say about the boog.
Okay.
There is something going on in our culture right now where the word civil war is on the lips of so many different kinds of people. I almost feel that they're going to speak something into existence
Mhm.
that otherwise might not have happened.
Yes.
Anyone who's a student of history, who's observed cultures previous to the onset of wars, recognizes the ground is rumbling now.
Mhm.
And everybody feels that, no matter what side of the aisles you might come from.
Right.
When that comes down, it's not going to be authoritarians versus liberty-minded people. It's
Mhm.
going to be one type of authoritarian versus another type of authoritarian. That is the way the numbers shake out in this. But what that says to me is that whatever power structure we have going on right now is terminally ill, in the way that Rome was terminally ill. And right up until the time that Rome fell, everyone thought that was completely impossible. It was so big, so built up, so established for 1,000 years that Rome could not possibly fall. And then it did. And then it fell. 2 barbarians, no less. I do not think we will be different. I've known since I was a teenager that the United States will meet the same fate as Rome.
Of course.
So what happens in that chaos can actually be a halcyon era of freedom, depending on who takes power in that place, in that vacuum. We have an opportunity in that time to separate, to not be a giant leviathan of 450 billion people trying to like combine into one state. That doesn't work. That eventually crumbles, and then we have time to separate and be something else. I don't know what form that will take. Nobody does, but I think it's very exciting. Not all of us are gonna make it, maybe even me, but it's what we have now is terminally ill, and I think it's dying, and that presents a very unique time that only happens a couple of times in history, where people have the chance to write their own story again.
So here's what we need to do then. As anyone who's like liberty minded, we want to do some vetting. But as soon as the Civil War pops off, everyone who we accept, we just grab one big piece of land and we just sit there. We just hold it against whatever comes our way. Just hold
We
it
can
there,
defend it.
and then just bam, new country right there.
So yeah,
Call it New Liberia or
balkanization,
something.
divorce, if you will, separation.
Right.
Georgia is not the
Secession?
same country as California, and
Not at
I
all. Not even
would be
close.
very happy to separate from them. They
Yeah.
can be California, we can be Georgia, and that's a peaceful way to do things. You end a
Absolutely.
relationship before you kill each other. You know?
Hopefully, yeah.
But see,
We don't have
it's this
Go
kind
ahead.
of talk that makes me sad, though.
I know. It sucks.
I mean,
It's
because I'm like,
unfortunate.
this is
sucks.
America.
Yeah.
This is the United States of America,
Yeah.
and I keep in the back of my mind, I keep wondering or hoping, is there not somebody out there that can come that could possibly come into the present system we have, and for want of a better term, bring balance to the force, like you know, bring some sort of harmony back to the government to where we can start to fix this without having to dismantle the entire fucking thing.
I think
Have we passed that point?
I think either yes, or it would have to be an extremely authoritarian way of going about it, like brutally efficient and very thorough.
We have to be that person for ourselves.
Yeah.
We can't keep looking around hoping that this mythical person will appear. They're not going to. We have to be that person for ourselves. And that is a scary proposition. Like
Yeah.
all that kind of like self-responsibility is like an insanely, like even to me, like I grew up in the heyday of 90s America, you know, so like these concepts are probably so foreign to me that I have no conception under God what I'm asking. But at the same time, what we have is, as I've described, terminally ill. It's not working the way we want it to work. It's not working as described. And in fact, it's brutally harmful to many people across the globe who suffer underneath the authoritarian war making that the United States does. And as sad as it might be to see what the founders conceptualized as America to come down, so much of it is sick and ill that something else now needs to take its place. It is a old man. It lived a good life. It did many good things. It is now sick, and it will die soon. And that sucks, and it's sad because there is a lot about America that is good. And hopefully the people that grew up in those things will be able to impart them to their children, will have the opportunity to impart them to their children in some other form. Maybe it won't take on the stars and stripes anymore. Maybe it won't have all those traditional songs sung the same anymore. But, you know, every time the wheel has turned like this, mankind has risen for it. I mean, you look at things like the Black Plague came through. The Renaissance is what came in the wake of the plague. So each time we have these tragedies that a lot of times we bring on ourselves, we learn from them and we rise from them. And maybe there will be a new Renaissance, a new enlightenment that comes from understanding. I think one day we'll look back at the state the same way we look at slavery and say, how could we possibly have subjected human beings to this state of being? It's, you know, we're not ready for that because we're the kind of, as you know, as they were 200 years ago, they were living in slavery. So they didn't understand life without it. We live in the state. So we don't understand necessarily what life might look like without it. But I think it will be better. And I'm willing to see some of my dearly beloved traditions sacrificed on that altar, for sure.
I think it's just
very hopeful message too.
Thank you.
Yeah. I think it's sad that we have this massive American society with so many people that just don't realize how fucking good you have it. I mean, I get it that things may not work the way you want. You know, you mentioned something, the government doesn't work the way we want it to, but that in and of itself is a very broad definition because of so many varying fractured factions in this country.
Yeah.
To get one idea of what the government should be working for, you know, is but you know, it's I'm sorry, I lost my train for a second.
Well, Jeff of the Mises Institute said something really interesting, and he said, if you had a button that you could push that would, you know, undo the power of the government, but the society that would rise as a result wouldn't be the culture that you wanted. So say if you're a conservative, it would be like a libertine society, and if you were a libertine, it would be like a you know, like Catholic monarchy type situation. If you knew that the society that would rise in its place would not be the culture that you wanted, would you still hit that button? And if you wouldn't, then, you know, you're not necessarily on the actually on the libertarian train. And I had to think about that for a long time. Would I
a Catholic monarchy wouldn't be that bad.
I mean, maybe for some. As a woman, I'm not sure I agree with
fair
that.
enough. All right, fair enough.
So I had to take a deep think about that, you know, because I would maybe necessarily want a more libertine type of society. Would I see a Catholic monarchy rise? And I think I would. I think I would hit the button.
Yeah.
I also agree that I don't have any conception, not really, of what it is that I'm asking. I can
Right.
only theoretically imagine these things.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's truth to that. Like if it were going to end up that we would be like China is now, that's horrific. I wouldn't trade what we have now for what China is, you know, like
Right.
the concentration camps and the
Exactly.
not in a million years, you know.
And that's why I say so many people in this, that's what I was going to say, is so many people in this country don't appreciate what they have. I mean, you know, you ask a lot of people, you know, oh, you don't like this country. Well, are you sitting at your dinner table waving flies away in your non-air conditioned hovel as your kids sit and pick through a bowl of rice to get the mealy bugs out or whatever's in there so that they can get their one meal for the fucking day?
It is a privilege to even be able to discuss these matters. The only way you're able to even discuss this stuff is that you have a full belly. That you're not scared that someone's going to come down the street and murder your family to take what you have. So it's a unique privilege in history that we exist in now. There's also been a trade-off for that. The convenience that we enjoy, the prosperity that we enjoy has robbed us of so much of the essentialness, the essential things we need to know in order to survive without the state.
Right.
Nobody who can make a fire anymore. You know, like, well, yay, that's awesome. I've tried to do it and I've blistered my hands apart and haven't yet made fire. Right. So those are things to consider. Absolutely.
Right.
What would it really mean? And it would mean death for a lot of people.
Right.
Yeah.
That's not something to sugarcoat. That's not something to like shy away from and pretend like that these theologically high-minded ideas are just going to result in a utopian society. No, we're going to go through a dark age.
Yeah.
I think we're going to go through that dark age regardless. I think what rises in those ashes depends on who's there to speak.
Yeah.
In the wake. So I think, you know, I appreciate definitely what you're saying. There's so much truth to what you're saying. But I think regardless of whether we would want it or not, that it's coming.
Yeah, see, I grew up in a time where I knew that it was coming. I've always known that something was going to happen, but I grew up in a time where the expectation was, of course, you know, nuclear. It was going to be some sort of war. World War III was always the big scare. That's when you knew a civilization was going to fall apart. I never expected that it was going to happen because of a new cold and arresting a black guy. I didn't know that was going to be the final nail in our coffin. Yeah, I'm like, this is very confusing to me.
Yeah, we had a powder keg already, and those were the sparks that flew that just happened to land on the already prepared keg.
I wouldn't even put it at like this might be a decline. I don't think this is the fall at the moment. I think that's another 50, 100 years from now is when you'll really see that. Unless something, severely accelerates. But
my dad said to me, it's going to happen slow, and then it's going to happen very fast. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with Dan Carlin's, what is that called? A Blueprint for Armageddon?
I'm familiar with Dan Carlin, but not that.
So he does a thing about World War I, a detailed analysis of World War I. And it's very much the case that things are happening slowly in the regard of almost how we're talking right now. People sat around and they remunerated and they discussed how this could never happen and this might happen and what would we do if it did. And it was a slow crawl. And then all of a sudden it was blindingly fast. And that's how these things happen, is they're very slow and then they're very fast. So my whole thing is just to maybe try and wrap my head around the idea of that this might come and what would I do in the absence of it, you know. So just, you know, at this point it's theoretical, of course. I don't know what I would really do. I know what I would hope that I would do, and that's, you know, got to be enough for now.
I mean, I think if you're thinking about it, you're more likely to act in that way, you know, when the time comes.
I hope so.
Yeah. But you can never really know. Yeah.
We don't know what kind of people we are when we're hungry.
Right. Oh, yeah.
I wonder which it's going to be. Are we going to have a justified into this? Like, when it does happen really fast, is it going to be justified, or is it going to be a bunch of spoiled brats running around wanting something better than this already greatness that we have?
I mean, I think that's kind of irrelevant why it's happening. It's just kind
Well,
of
to me,
what you're doing once it's happening.
The ends justify the means for me. Like, if God willing, God forbid / God willing, if it does happen and I live through it, I want to be able to look back on it and go, well, this happened for a justified reason, not something that's going to be mocked and laughed at in the history books because we were just a bunch of fucking babies. Which a lot of this sounds like to me.
I definitely understand that feeling. Like I said, I know that it comes from a place of privilege, but the only reason we can even have this conversation is because we're well off. We're rich. We are in the top 1% of history, let alone just the people on the planet right
Where
now.
the fuck do you people think we live? I mean, my God, what is going on with you?
I mean, the poorest people in our country live better than kings would have in, the 1100s or the 1200s.
We're living better than the Rockefellers lived in the 20s.
Yeah.
And the poor person today lives with more amenities than the Rockefellers had in the 1920s. I mean, Queen Elizabeth didn't even have a toilet.
Right.
The first one. I'm sure the second one does.
I'm sure, yeah.
And
I'm sure she's got a couple of
them. And I would honestly say that needs to be the new woke. That needs to be the new standard for woke. For people to just fucking look around themselves and realize that, yes, I get it. Freedom comes at a fucking price. I don't care where you're at. Because there are places where they tell you have freedom, but that price is very fucking steep. It's at the cost of your life if you don't live within that realm of freedom that they give you in the proper way. But here, I mean, I've got the freedom to sit here and say, fuck my government. I've got the freedom to say, fuck you, John.
Yeah.
And know that I can sit here and enjoy that freedom without, anything other than, psychotic repercussion.
If I may, you can and you can't. You can because you don't know anything about anybody important. If you knew something about somebody important, you wouldn't have that freedom.
Right.
So I think a lot of what we believe to be freedom is a veneer. That, part of the problem with that is that we are so well fed and we're so well kept so that we won't rock the boat when, our government is basically being run by a bunch of elitist pedophiles who traffic in human beings and survive on baby blood. Like, it's pretty fucking horrifying. So I none of this is good. Like, it's none of the options we have are good. Sometimes the only options you have are complete fucking shit. And, of our complete shit options, the easiest one, of course, is to continue as is. And, there's a huge part of me that likes my hot showers and I like eating every day.
It's fun, right?
Yeah, it's fun. I like being able to walk down my street knowing that I probably won't be kidnapped. I probably won't be shot at, You can
get in your fucking car and just drive somewhere.
Yeah. So some of that is a pacifier, in my opinion. That because we live so well, so few of us are willing to rock the boat. People have kids to feed. And I don't fault them for wanting to continue a world where they can feed their children.
Of course.
That's common instinct, you know what I'm saying? But I think that the way that the system is set up is unsustainable. So whether we would wish it or not is almost immaterial. That the insustainability of that system will eventually collapse under its own corruption, will collapse under its own power.
Right.
And when that happens, what do we do with ourselves at that point? I think is more kind of where I'm coming from. I don't wish to see a world where I can't take a hot shower every morning. I am a cranky bitch when I don't get a hot shower. So, and like I said, nobody knows what kind of person they are when they're actually hungry. What I do know is that this country, in its early infancy, was built by a bunch of hookers and thieves and common people who were on the edge of starvation And those people managed to make something great with what they had, which was virtually nothing. And I believe in that spirit. I really believe that, like, Western enlightenment, that candle is lit. And as long as somebody is willing to maintain that, no matter what happens, is my operative. Like, how do we maintain those values? Even whether this Roman-esque halcyon time of plenty comes to an end, how do we still maintain that candle of Western civilization? And that, that might not always be comfortable. It's comfortable now. It might not always be so. And like I said, when that war that's on everyone's lips comes, it's not going to be the libertarian people versus the non-libertarian people. We are going to be as minority and unimportant to that situation as we are right now.
That's right.
Oh, yeah.
We just have to try to keep the candle lit. And that is my only operative to anyone, is keep the candle lit no matter what you can do.
Well, see, and that's my biggest concern, is I don't foresee that happening in the event of something cataclysmic like that. I just don't see it. What I see is, to make an earlier reference, I see the rise of a Negan. I see that happening. You are not going to put somebody in place to replace this government that is not more authoritarian and more fucking status, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
It's going to be a much harsher reality. Democracy is going to be a dream that once was when the new regime begins. Once, whatever it is that replaces, it's going to be fucking nightmare. I don't care how. To me, it's just, it will be.
So do you guys remember the plot for what was that movie, V for Vendetta?
Yeah.
It was actually, they were terrified by a virus that swept through their society.
Yep.
And because they were terrified of this virus, they gave all these powers over to the government. And when you watch that movie now, it is creepy how similar things are kind of riding in that direction.
Yeah.
Almost down to the point of, you're out after curfew. Like, you can be arrested. You're out after curfew. When that movie came out and that scene, I was like, that's crazy. People would never allow that to happen. But they have. Right in front of my face, they've allowed that to happen.
Yeah.
So the question we have is, at the end of V for Vendetta, because they obviously, just as you say, an authoritarian government rose way worse than anything we have now. At the end of V for Vendetta, what did that next day look like? When they rose and they blew up the Old Bailey and things all over the city exploded. What did the next day after that look like?
Well, we don't know, right?
We don't know.
Yeah. We don't know.
You have to wait
But
for
I
the
agree.
sequel.
I think it will get worse before it gets better. I have almost no doubt in my mind that it will.
So
there was a sequel, W for Woke.
You mentioned something earlier, which I've heard a lot of people say, and so I want to get your take on it.
Yeah.
A lot of people compare the U.S. as it is now to Rome, like the Roman Empire. I think a better comparison would be the old British Empire. I think we're much more like they are than Rome. I mean, for a number of reasons. One of them being when we conquer something, instead of conquering it, we just replace a puppet government like the British did. Sure. Whereas Rome, they would conquer it, make everyone citizens, and now that's part of Rome.
Unbeknownst to a lot of people, they allowed those states in a very similar to the British fashion to maintain their own cultures.
Right, they would maintain their own.
All you had to do is they put a Roman temple there, and you still had to give coins to the temple. But they let people do their own thing.
Pretty much, yeah. But we don't do that either, though. We don't allow people to do their own thing for the most part, right? We put a government up that is friendly to the U.S. And they have to do as we say, otherwise we get replaced.
Yes.
Right. That's much more like the old British Empire than it is, Rome, in my opinion, at least. So I'm just curious why, not just you, but people in general make that comparison all the time. When I think that the British Empire is a better comparison.
Well, I think that the U.S. has taken a lot of pains to model itself after Rome. And you look at the imagery that we use, and the eagle holding the standard, and the columns, and the Abraham Lincoln temple that they have in that is a Roman temple to a god.
That is,
if I have ever looked at one, it even has the white Corinthian columns. It is a Roman temple. So I think that people make that comparison because the U.S. has gone to a lot of pains to make themselves
I
look
guess that's
that.
fair, yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, we don't operate like that at all. You know, like if you look at the old British Empire, they're all over the globe,
Yeah.
and like random, or seemingly random. They're obviously very strategic locations like Gibraltar, South Africa. You know, these places, India and
Yeah.
Hong Kong. Um, you know, these are all places that are very strategic for, you know, waterways and easy trade from, you know, Great Britain to the rest of the world. That seems to be more like what we do, taking territories or installing puppet governments that, you know.
Yeah, I think there's truth to that because it's like that was meant to be a financial
Right.
empire as opposed to an empire of might.
I guess
And
that's that's what I'm trying to say.
The
I
U.S.
guess
combines those things.
Yeah.
It takes that financial power, but it also takes the military might. And
Right.
we have that. We do have that very Roman-esque, even maybe Spartan-esque kind of view of ourselves that we are, you know, the top of the pile. And it's necessary for us to be so. And that's definitely in the mind of the common people, you know,
Yeah.
the ones you can get to support these wars. You'll have people almost openly admit that it's just about us being number one.
Yeah.
And that's Rome.
Oh yeah, for sure.
That is Rome come alive.
I don't know. That's a lot of British patriotism too. I don't know. I guess those are pretty much any empire you would think, right? We had to be number one.
The British also would model themselves after Greece and after Rome. They would look at that as what they wanted to make themselves into. So just kind of like the incarnations of that is just sort of like repeating itself. We want to be like the big guy before us.
Well, it was because we became a superpower. Like the 80s, that's all you ever heard. Russia and America, the two big superpowers. And our goal was to make Russia look like shit and be the superpower. And we are, for all intents and purposes. If you don't like look at the economics of it and just how fucked up crazy that gets. But let me ask you both this, and I'll start with you, Jessica. So let's take the coronavirus and let's take the riots and protests and set those aside. Okay, let's go back just to the short ways. How much was of your life was impacted, or did you feel the burden, the weight of this oppressive government in your daily life, day to day? How much did you feel it?
I mean, that's a difficult question to answer because they're so integral to our everyday lives, even from infancy, like not infancy, very, very close after infancy. We're in school and we're being taught to say the pledge and to feel patriotic and to kind of, you know, integrate nationalism, American nationalism into our feelings about ourselves.
Which I'm a fan of, don't get me wrong.
Okay. I mean, I enjoy I love the Fourth, and I'm like, yeah, America, you know. So so let me distinct something here. Let me make a discrete thing here that I love my country. I love what the ideal of America is. I think it's beautiful. I think it deserves to be preserved, and it has improved the world by leaps and bounds. The state is a separate thing from that. The nature of the state, as described by Murray Rothbard, cannot be anything else but to service its own power. And so I think that America itself is not the state. And the ideal of what America is something that can exist without a federal government to enact it and enforce it and bring it to the territories at the butt of a rifle and the point of a gun. You know, people long for freedom. It's part of their nature. I believe that God put that in us, wherever you come from on that, it's integral to our spirit as human beings. We long for freedom. So for me, what I oppose is the state. I don't oppose America, the ideal of what America is supposed to be. As far as the state goes, I mean, you can't drive without permission of the state. You can't marry without permission of the state. You can't, you know, there's almost nothing in your life that you can do without the government somehow pulling a shekel or two out of your existence. So it's not oppressive and on top of you all the time in the way that Derek Chauvin's knee was on top of George Floyd's neck. That's just an extreme example of it. But it's incremental. in so many tiny little ways. It's the death by 1,000 cuts.
Yeah.
Like, at what point, I don't know if you guys have ever heard the tale of a slave, where you have a slave, but his master gives him leave to have one day off, and he gives him $1 to spend on that day. And then increasingly the story goes on. He has 2 days off and $2. He's got 6 days off and $6. Most of his time is off, but he only pays a pittance of 20% of his income to the state. At what point does this stop being the tale of a slave? You know, so I think that conceptually we are sort of being, like I said, the death of 1,000 cuts by our own state. That's not to say America. That's to say the federal government, the state, is the enemy.
Distinction between country and state.
Yes.
Yeah. The
Without
government
getting too
is
long
not.
winded.
Yeah, the government is not the country itself.
Right. But so ultimately what you're saying is that, like, you weren't living a day-to-day life of feeling terribly oppressed by the government, but there were just so much of the things that you do in your life were entangled with the government that it's pervasive in your life.
Yeah, I mean, try to be married without the state, you know, like try to drive a car without the state.
But the argument can be made that these are just social contracts that you're entering into. You get a driver's license under the idea that you have learned how to drive and that you're going to be a safe driver, and the license says so. So that you're going to be out there, right?
Why?
Well, no, I'm just saying.
There's this concept of the social contract, but you're born into a social contract that you never sign, already in debt to people in the past who have borrowed money against your existence that you never agreed to. So the premise of a contract is that you have the agency to agree to it and you have the agency to withdraw from it. I have neither. So I don't identify it as a contract. Because it doesn't meet the definition of a contract.
Yep.
I don't have no choice in the matter. I have no agency. And as a woman, consent is like a topic that I feel very strongly about. And I have not.
I think that's the best way of going about it. Again, when you argue against lefties with the social contract, best way to do it is through consent. Is through the argument of consent, throwing that argument right back and like, yes,
now,
I 100% agree with consent.
You'll be put into a cage. You'll have a gun pointed at you, and you'll be put into a cage unless you obey these contract rules. It's still not a contract. It's more a threat.
Yeah.
You know, Irwin Schiff died in prison merely because he wanted to argue that the income tax was not legal. And they allowed this. He was 80 when they put him in prison for writing a book. So I think in a lot of ways, our idea of what freedom is a veneer. If you can die in prison because you wrote a book, it's not what it pretends to be.
Right.
Well, then I would ask this question. So when we talk about a government that is inherently trying to become more powerful, that like it's part of its nature to become more powerful, what say you to the idea that I would honestly say, at least for the last 30 to 40 years, our population has been handing that power to the government through their demands for change, their demands for uniformity, equality, regulation. How much has the government taken versus how much was given and begged for them to take?
So twofold. It's twofold. I said not twofold, a double-edged sword with that, because you have this requirement that children be sent to these indoctrination camps that we know as public schools. And in public schools, these ideologies are imparted to them that they are part of a social contract, and that because of the social contract, they are owed the wealth of others. And, you know, we can go down the list of the libertarian complaints of taxation and all those other things. So, you know, I think that, yes, they have been sort of asking for it, but at the same time, they're sort of brainwashed into believing that they're owed it in the first place. And, you know, it is on the part of the parents to no longer agree to have their children educated by the state. It's on us to educate our own children. And we've actually been presented with a unique opportunity because of Corona. Now, don't get me wrong, I wouldn't have it happen this way, but it has happened this way. And a lot of people are realizing that, they can educate their own children. And also people are realizing that they're relying on the state as a babysitter. And so some of those realizations, as almost all realizations are painful. And it's going to cause a lot of hurt to people who are relying on the state as a daycare. But you're realizing, like, this isn't about educating children. This is about so I can go create a taxable income.
Yeah.
And what do we value more? What do we value most? Do we value keeping the values of Western civilization alive? And if we do, we have to be responsible for educating our children, because the state will not educate them to be critical thinkers. The state will only educate them as far as they need to go to be obedient tax slaves. And that's it. And they will not go any further with that. And as a student of history, I had to go seek that out on my own. Like, that didn't come from school.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, same with anything I've learned from, history or about history. Most of it didn't come from school. No. If it did, it was like something that I saw that piqued my interest. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to go look more into that. But nothing like from the school that I really was learned, about history. So, I mean, yeah, obviously doing it yourself is always better. You go at your own pace. However much time you have, you can dedicate, a block of time per day to just looking things up. It's as simple as that. Just doing that, for 15, 30 minutes a day will help you out tremendously.
Some people might find
history,
that having a parent at home is more important than having that second taxable income. And that's a choice that they're going to have to make. And life is not full of easy choices, it's full of hard choices. That's going to be painful for some people. It's going to be painful for a lot of people, because we've gotten so dependent on it. It's like being addicted to a drug. When you finally realize this drug is killing you, you have to go through a detox, and that detox is painful,
sucks,
horrible, you sweat and you throw up and you curse God. But at some point, like 2 weeks down the road, you wake up one day and you're free. If you are willing to go through the detox. And I think that some of detox from the state is necessary if any of this is to survive. If any of this like American dream is to continue, we have to detox from the state in a large way, in a large and painful way.
Oh yeah.
I don't enjoy for anyone.
No, of course not.
Relish it, but it's like an addict. It needs to happen.
Right.
I guess I'm far too cynical to see, you talk about detoxing from the state, people talk about decentralization and, more about, let's look at, take a harder look at states' rights, but you're just looking, you're just asking for a more local form of the same corruption, the same, power grabbing government. It's going to happen on a small scale as it will on a large scale. Yes, it's fewer people to be beholding to, but it doesn't matter. You can really railroad 50 people in a community if you want to and be a supreme overlord. I mean, it's really easy to do.
So one example. Sorry, I'll go ahead. I'm sorry.
But I was just going to say, I don't think America can survive as a country if we have an alternative to the authoritarian state that's coming.
Well, I would point out that we have before. In our past, when America was new and the federal government did quite stretch all the way from coast to coast. There were a lot of towns and places that existed sort of like independently of the state. Right. But it was still like we were all still Americans. Like we had this like not ideology, what am I thinking of? Like a common culture that kind of like bound us. And part of that common culture was like the belief in that a man's body is his own property, that no one can force him to do anything he doesn't want to do with his own body and his own property, that he has a right to defend his property. All of these values got passed to us from, like John Locke in the 1600s. So these ideas existed quite a long time before authoritarian regimes existed to enact them. They're part of our common culture from the Enlightenment, from our grandparents, wherever we might come from in all our far-flung places, came here looking to be part of that common culture. And so I would say that I've seen it exist without the authoritarian state, and I believe that it can.
But see, there were so many differences though, versus that time and this. You know, you didn't have issues with like the immense population that we have comparatively to then, the technological advancements that we have that put everybody on each other's doorstep from one side of the country to the other. You didn't have this huge diverse melting pot of people like we do now, so widely spread and so vocal and boisterous in their wants and needs and their demands. You didn't have all of these things that cry out for someone to take control and keep it all organized, keep it all ordered. Because if you don't have that, then we cannot maintain a country. It will become smaller country states. It will not be a United States of America. We will lose our standing as a country because we're too much. I mean, if you look at something like China, 1.5 billion people, and how hard the state runs that country, it's because they have so many cattle that they have to keep in the fucking pen. And we're getting there ourselves. There's just so many of us. And of course, these, as we advance technologically and our voices can be heard as an individual, now everybody can be a victim. Everybody can cry out for change. And it's 100 different changes that need to happen. And you've got to demand your government settle on one. And it becomes unfathomable to me.
That's the thing. That's the big problem, is that people, you know, there's 100 different types of problems, right? And they have to choose one. But why? Right? Like, why does it have to be one overarching rule for everybody when, like we were mentioning before, how Georgia is not the same country as California, right? California has its own set of problems. Georgia has its own set of problems. You know what I mean? Like, but putting one rule that fixes Georgia might wreck California even more than it already is. You know what I mean? So why can't we let
it comes down to one simple thing. If you were right now to travel over to Paris, France, and somebody asks you, where are you from? Oh, I'm a Floridian. That's not what you're going to say. You're going to say, I'm an American.
Right.
We're all Americans. So what is good for one American should be good for all Americans.
No, that's not how that works.
That's what's been created. No. That's the mindset that's been created in this country. Look at the equality, the argument for equality that's been going on ever since civil rights. I mean, between whether it's minorities, whether it's women, whether it's homosexuals, it's all about equality. Every single person needs to be treated the exact same way. And that coincides with not enough people have any fucking clue what states' rights even means.
That's true for sure. Yeah, that is for sure.
So true. Where do they look? I'd
like to point something out, though. You can have diversity or you can have equality. Those two words are opposites of each other. If things are equal, they are not diverse. So if we have this great diversity in this country, which is something like the melting pot, that's something that, like, a part of American culture I'm definitely proud of, that we have so many different types of people here. If we're all made equal, and we agree equality under the law. We should all have equality under the law. We don't have that, but we should. But that idea of equality can only extend so far before it butts up against the idea of diversity. There needs to be a diverse array of ideas that can exist. And so if we're all kind of made to amalgamate, we're all kind of made to be the same thing, then, you know, we can't be diverse, and diversity is our strength. I think that that's true, that diversity is our strength. Right. So I agree with equality up to equality under the law.
Right.
The rest of it,
100%.
Forcing individuals to see everyone around them is, you know, controlling the way that they think about people, controlling what they're able to say about people, because everybody has to feel equally. Is shooting ourselves. It's cutting off our nose to spite our face.
Mm-hmm.
But in a, you say diversity is what makes us great, but I also think it is one of our biggest weaknesses right now because of the diversity of culture in this country. This is because we have these cultural wars that have been going on for quite some time, which I think are a very obvious precursor to much of what's going on now.
Yeah.
In that
Oh
sense,
yeah.
and it's cultural war, not just it's not just between straights and gays. It's in every different okay, I live in the
Sure.
I
Yeah.
live in the eastern side of my town, and the bulk of the residents here are Latino Americans, and there's a very strong definitive cultural impact in my
Mm-hmm.
area, and these kind of things, sad to say, piss people off.
Yeah.
Like I get aggravated sometimes driving down the road when I see 3 billboards in a row that don't have a lick of English on them.
Sure.
I mean,
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
bothers me to a certain extent, and I can see that magnifies in other people. And so I think that diversity, the need for diversity, maybe it's about this need for diversity, this how we're constantly now saying we need more diversity, we need to make sure we're being diverse, need diversity. Well, you're just shining a spotlight on what makes everybody different and getting people to say, oh, well, I don't like those differences, now I'm going to act on that.
Well, I also mean, though, diversity of thought, diversity
Sure.
of opinions on how things might progress or how we might go. So, for example, in Georgia, there is a very different idea about abortion than there is in California. In California, they're quite willing to have a pregnancy terminated all the way up until the day that the baby is ready to come out. In Georgia, quite a lot of people feel very differently about that. So if you tried to have one overarching law that made both Georgia and California fit under this thing, it wouldn't work for both. So when people, for example, like Alyssa Milano comes to the court hall in Georgia and she tries to say, oh, well, I think that you guys should behave the way that we in California believe, that's an affront to the values that we have here. So the original intent of the founders was that we would be a loose confederation of different states, almost as though we were different countries that were bound together under some kind of, free trade, where we had open borders between these countries and free trade between these countries, but we're still essentially different countries. And that idea was kind of undone by the Civil War, and rightly so. The destruction of slavery is a great triumph for human history. We are now in a different era. It's not for the preservation of slavery so much as the preservation of the diversity of ideas and the ability for Georgia not to be California simply because California has more money and has more famous people and has, the pull to turn around and tell Georgia what to do. Georgia should still, like, I'm very, being from Georgia, I'm a little biased, but I'm very impressed with Kemp saying, I will not enforce any kind of mask mandate. Whereas there are states such as California and New York where they've been in lockdown for months. I haven't been in lockdown. So, for me, I'm very glad that I live here. I'm very glad that we still maintain some semblance of diversity between these different organizations known as states.
Yeah, and I will say that again, to me, that points to the difference in the times as well. That was all fine and well and good once upon a time when you may never have ever left your fucking state. But nowadays, going to another state is a day trip. It's just, running across the border, going somewhere, jumping on a plane from California, going to Las Vegas, whatever, just all these little, it's like these lines between these states has become so blurred that, again, we've reached this technological point where the state is an end result of where we've come. I mean, it's just, I mean, you don't have a choice but to have this happen. The rule of law is going to get harder and harder, and is going to weigh more and more on us because we are asking for it.
So I think that there is a current happening now where people are starting to turn around and say, okay, the train has gone way far off the tracks. We don't like the direction things are going. And I do feel a sort of pendulum swing coming up back against that sort of woke culture, or left, illiberal left and things of that nature.
Do you think there was a catalyst for that?
I can't say that there was any
Just
one.
say Trump. Just say it.
No, not even that.
No, just kidding. I'm kidding.
To say, I think Trump is just another spark that lands on a powder keg. Like, we were already headed in this direction. They can map, heat map basically the types of language that we're seeing kind of like made into our oppressive woke culture. Now that stuff started in like 2011. So that train was already on the tracks long before Trump ever got there. He was just a spark that kind of lit things off. So I don't think it's any one event, but I think that Trump highlighted a lot of things. I think that a lot, like myself, I was content as a nominal Democrat until Trump. And then I observed the reaction of the press and the reaction of the state to the election of an outsider. And to have someone outside of their chosen elite be elected was an unthinkable evil to them. And, something that Ron Paul said, I'm a libertarian, I got to bring up Ron Paul, but he had said that, when they're arresting people and putting them in jail for telling the American people what their government gets up to and calling it treason. Well, treason is, the definition of treason is that you're giving information to the enemy.
Yeah.
So they consider the American people their enemy. They have set themselves in opposition to America, not us. We haven't chosen to be in opposition to them. They chose it.
Yeah.
And that is, yeah.
Yeah, well, that Ron Paul, pretty smart cookie.
Love you, Dr. Paul.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
I'm just saying, you're going to be beholden. Just live with it. You're going to be beholden.
Aren't we all? At the end of the day?
Before we wrap this up, I do have a question because I saw an article that I wanted to touch on just very briefly. Apparently, there's supposed to be a report coming out. I know that you're probably both aware that over the last year or two, there's been like, the next cycle of upswing in UFO sightings, things like this, right?
Oh, I knew this is what you were going to talk about.
Okay.
Oh my God.
So now there's supposed to be a report coming out that is going to detail a lot of investigations that have gone on by our government with things, and some of these reports are indicating that there are actually materials that they've been testing and working with that we could not produce on this planet. But they're also concerned that some of this is other agencies at play here on the planet that are more technologically advanced than we even imagined. Do either one of you think that second part? I know, John, you think that we're the most technologically advanced country in the world.
I think that's more likely than some kind of extraterrestrial thing. Not that I don't believe that aliens could exist or that they don't. I do. I do think that aliens exist somewhere. Whether they're here or not, I don't know. But I think it's much more likely that it would be something here that's native to Earth rather than something that's not.
Well, they did. Like I said, part of this report is supposed to allude to the fact that they've been dealing with materials that we can't reproduce here. Like we haven't been able, we're not able to make. So, I mean, Jessica,
are you familiar with? I think it's called the Sword of Mars. I think it was Genghis Khan's sword. Let me look it up real quick, so I'm not just talking.
That was just a Damascus blade. Come on,
no,
it's true.
I mean, I
but it was made of a meteorite.
Think that there are definitely extraterrestrial advanced civilizations, just as a numbers game in the vastness of the universe. There would absolutely have to be, in my mind. I think Occam's razor applies here. That the simplest explanation tends to be the correct one, and that it is far more likely that our government has been caught. Our government or another government has, just had few too many reports coming out that it no longer enables them to hide some of this. or or they're very happy to have a distraction. I wouldn't put that past them either. I think the most likely explanation is that it's something that comes from Earth. But, who's to say? I think there is a very real possibility that in the eventuality of time, our civilization is going to come in contact with another civilization. Is that the case this time? There is definitely not enough information for me to say so. But I think it's very interesting that you can look at some of these UFO stories and entire towns or multitudes of towns have had similar experiences, even to the point where there's the new Unsolved Mysteries on Netflix right now. There's a UFO episode on there. I definitely recommend everybody watch it. There are kids that got pulled up into this thing that saw other kids that they knew from school and met up with each other the next day. Like, did I see you? Like, I saw you, right? And how do you have 6 towns across 2 states have the same delusion? It's
LSD gas. God.
I mean, crazy world.
Yeah. Couple things on that. One, I just want to clarify because I looked it up. Sword of Mars is actually Attila's sword, not Genghis Khan's. So I'm gonna put that out there because I originally said Genghis. But yeah, that was made from meteorite, which like meteorite iron or something like that, which is obviously unearthly. But we've been my point was going to be that we've been building with like material not from the earth, for a while, or at least in small bits.
The Tunguska event, for example, left a lot of space material on the ground.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But so I mean, even if it was like material that that doesn't even happen on Earth, it could just be from something like that. And then with the kids who met up in school, in school and that sort of thing. I mean, with that one instance, I can't speak to the other ones, but with that one instance, I mean, kids get bored and kids are very creative. There are ways that they could. Obviously, memories are suggestible. Are you able to suggest things? I forget what I was going with that, but yeah, there's lots of ways that could have happened to where eventually they were all telling the same story, and then that's when it got out. I don't know. I mean, it could very well be that they got pulled up into a UFO and
but what's
saw each
interesting
other.
about that is that you have a person in a different state 50 miles away who gives the same account, who doesn't know any of these people.
Okay, so that's different. Yeah. That makes it a little bit different.
Wake up, John. The truth is out there.
You should watch the episode.
I want it to be true. You don't understand. I want it desperately to be true. That would be amazing. I just can't. I can't until it's right in front of me. Like
now on the grounds of what technology I did read today that scientists, I think it's in Germany and in other countries, collaboration. We finally have the first uncuttable metal. It's like it's this alloy, and inside it they put like ceramic plating inside it. So when you try and cut it with any kind of saw blade, it might break through the exterior surface just a little, but when it starts hitting like that ceramic, it creates a dust that is like sandpaper and kills the fucking blade.
Wow.
Like it's almost a defensive metal.
Do you know what the material is called? Because my husband is actually a materials physicist.
I think they said, I think the name they gave it was Proteus.
Proteus? Okay.
Yeah.
I want to look further into this because that is something fascinating.
Along those lines. I think they called it Proteus. But yeah, they say ultimately the metal itself will defeat the blades that try to cut it.
Blades,
and
that's crazy.
They used a variety of different blades trying to cut it, and they couldn't cut it.
They use like the water jet. I forget what they call it, but like it's like a very thin stream of water that they push at like high pressure, cut shit like
I don't know if they talked about using. Did they talk about using water?
I don't know.
I can't remember if they talked about.
And then like diamond blades, like diamond tipped.
Acid etching and laser etching and all kinds of stuff that they can do. So, but maybe like what people would have access to is blades. Those kinds of cutting materials. Right. So.
Typically the things that they're still testing and they're still trying to find something that'll cut through this. But the only thing that pisses me off is that they called it like Proteus, and they didn't just say adamantium. I'm just like, fuck you. Right? Fuck you.
Lost the opportunity.
Right? I mean, Wolverine's turning over in his grave.
I mean, you know, scientists are huge nerds. I mean, that's why they went into science in the first place. So, like, why wouldn't they have? That should have been the first thing to come to mind.
Not jump on adamantium, even vibranium, something. Come on, bitches.
My husband is a physicist, and every person who hears that says, "So when are you guys coming up with transporters?"
I don't want.
I'm not getting a transporter.
I don't even want I just want the food replicators.
Yeah,
now,
food replicators.
that is something I would be into. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I want to have steak and potatoes every fucking night I decide to.
And it not clog your heart up and stuff. That'd be fucking awesome. Like,
well, the problem with the transporter is that it murders you.
Right. That's why I'm like, no.
It destructs you.
Right. Now, see, that's a very aggressive term.
It does do that though. It murders you.
No.
The you that is you is gone. They 3D print another you.
Look,
and it might have all your memories and all your food preferences, but that is not you.
You know how many drug addicts deconstruct themselves and reconstruct themselves in rehab all the fucking time? I don't want to hear your bitches.
But
go join Dr. McCoy's group.
It's still the same consciousness though. Like,
yeah, weird, right?
Yeah.
Hey, you know what? Elon Musk is going to beat us all to it. He's got the thing. I just saw that also. His little brain chip that they're working on that they should have ready for the public within the next 5 years or so. He's actually saying that it's, he said the great thing about this is it'll be able to replace headphones. You'll just you'll be able to have the chip, and one of the things it'll be able to do is stream music right to your eardrums. Just it'll be Bluetooth. You won't even have to worry about headphones anymore. You'll just have music in your head, and it won't bother anybody.
I don't care if it'll make me able to do math. I'm not putting that thing in my head.
Well, maybe when I'm 80, I'll do it. Then I don't care anymore.
Jessica,
I'm over it.
I love how you both act like you have a choice.
I know, right?
It's gonna come in the COVID vaccine. Like you'll get the COVID vaccine, you get the chip at the same time. You'll be like, I hear music.
All right. So I will say this, chat. I'm sorry. I know we haven't really been. We spent the last part of this really just talking, but there was a lady in the house. She was talking, and I know you're all gentlemen, and you'll understand that, making sure that we heard her voice throughout
Thanks,
this.
Fellas.
I know. I saw a lot of hate for me because I'm such a statist.
Ron Helton was going in on you.
One thing everybody needs to take away from this is I'm not a statist. I'm an inevitabilitist. I just see the writing on the wall. I see the writing on the wall.
I will say this: you've come a long way since when we first started this show. You've come a long way in your statist views.
But I'm not going to be a loser libertarian.
It takes a lot. It takes a lot to be the person with the contradictory opinion in the room. And knowing that two other people are sitting here who might not necessarily agree with you, it takes bravery to do that. So, I appreciate that you're willing to sit here and contradict me. We need more.
Don't inflate his head even more.
No, we need this. We need to be able to hear other ideas without being reactionary to them. And
that's what makes the biggest difference.
The show, though, that's why we started the show. It's because we were so different in our views that we've gotten into plenty of heated arguments on this show. But we're still here.
Keep that candle. That right there is keeping the candle lit, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. Too bad it's going to burn the house down.
The place is a fucking tinderbox anyway.
Did anybody stop to think? Don't put the candle in the fucking records room. I'm just saying. There's too much
Why
paper.
Why is it a candle?
Right. Why can't it just? I got a 100-watt bulb here. Won't set anything on fire.
Can we have an LED of enlightenment?
Oh, now you goddamn global warming bullshit. Right. All right, here we go.
Just halogen bulbs of enlightenment.
All right, so before we get the hell out of here, Jessica, plug yourself real quick.
Please join my horror movie challenge. We have almost 150 members. I'd like to get up to 150 members. It's 100 Nights Oh Horror. We're both on Twitter and Facebook. And also I have the Jessica Green Show, which is on YouTube. And in November, I'm going to be starting a podcast that revolves around soup. We're calling it Soup Club. And once a week, we're just going to do a different soup. So you guys should look forward to that. Otherwise, find me on Twitter. I'm Libertarian Kitchen Witch on Twitter. And I like to chop it up, and I like to talk to people who don't agree with me. As long as you can do it respectfully, I'm game. I'll listen.
Hey, do me a
Awesome.
favor. Go jump on our Discord channel and, I don't know, in announcements or pick one of them and plug your horror movie marathon. Or
Yeah,
I'll drop
you'll
some
have
links
to-
in there for you.
plug
Yeah.
that in our server. I'm sure you'll pick up some people in there, maybe
Cool.
at least one.
If you drop it in general, I'll put it in the announcements.
Thanks, man.
'cause,
That's
yeah,
awesome. Thank you.
yeah, of course, yeah,
All right.
absolutely.
John, we haven't touched on this real quick. August 21st.
Yes, August 21st, we are doing another 12-hour live stream for charity for St. Jude's. Yeah, it's gonna be awesome. You should be
We
there.
should
You're
get that
invited,
girl.
of course.
We should
Yes,
get
of
that girl
course
right
you're
there.
invited. Absolutely.
That was a blast. I
Oh,
really
wasn't
enjoyed
it?
that.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Well, this time we have some extra stuff going on. We have 2 events so far that are absolutely going to happen. One of them is our sea shanty competition, where me and a group of 3 other people are going to be singing a sea shanty against professional singers. We're of course we're going to get creamed, but it'll be fun nonetheless. And then
I'm so excited.
that's not even the final thing. We have a trivia game that we're going to be doing as well. A Jeopardy style trivia game with an Amazon gift card up for grabs for the winner. Yeah. So we don't have the amount yet. I am working on that, but it will be at least $25.
Because
So-
Jeff Bezos needs our money.
Yeah. Well, it's just easiest if
Simpsons
people.
trivia. I'm gonna smoke.
Oh
you.
no! What we're doing is I'll actually reveal this real quick too. We've talked about this off mic. What we're doing is we're doing 3 rounds, and I'm making a round with my own 5 categories, and then Robert's making a round with his own 5 categories, and then we're going to do a third one that's about
Final Jeopardy, just a Final Jeopardy.
a Final Jeopardy question. I don't think we have the question yet, but yeah,
What?
we're doing the little Final Jeopardy thing. So
Yeah, I
it's
suggested
gonna be a
making
lot
the
of
Final
fun.
Jeopardy question a
Yeah.
real suck-up question.
Yeah,
And,
exactly.
But John was
Like, who's the best host of the generational gap and why is it John? And then
Like, oh, stop, you guys.
yeah,
Just
you guys.
stop it.
Right.
All right. John,
Exactly.
do me a favor. Tell them about that stuff down there where they can find us.
Yes, in our description, we've got our Twitter, which is at the GenGapP. We've got our Discord server, which is a lot of fun. I recommend that you guys go there. It's awesome. And then we've got freedomscoop.com, where you can find all of our stuff and other creators like Jay Edgar. Oh, you're wearing the shirt. Jay Edgar's over there. Stephen Ignoramus is over there. RRC, Already Conservative, he's over there. Wyatt from Roundtable Decision. And Freckles and Britt are over there now, which is awesome. Yeah.
Those are my girls. I love Freckles and Brett.
Yeah, they're great. And yeah, that's pretty much all we have over there besides our merch over on Freedom Scoop. You can buy our t-shirt, like the one that Robert was modeling a moment ago, and a mug
Modeling?
as well.
Did you say marteling?
I think I said modeling, but maybe. I do that. I have like mush mouth.
You mortal?
Yeah, I'm mortal all the time.
I do like.
Constantly.
I do
I've
like
never been
Freckles and
immortal,
Brett.
so
I have to say I like Freckles and Britt too. We got to get them on the charity stream as well. Every
Yeah.
time I see Freckles and Britt together, I have Me Too thoughts. With a hashtag.
Oh shit, that's not
so-
good.
But
Well,
I
I hope you don't like your job then, because it's gone. Just with
It's
the
not
simple
entirely
hashtag.
welcome.
What's a job? What's a job?
Oh yeah, that's true.
Come
Anyway,
on.
get the fuck out of here.
Folks, we do appreciate you coming out tonight and all your wonderful chat. Yes, I have been trying to read it and keep
Yeah,
up with
sorry
some of
guys.
it.
We've
You
been
know,
reading
I
it, just not out loud. I promise.
Right.
I've been reading it at least.
But I want to give mad props to Jessica for showing up. I always have a good time talking to you.
You as well.
You make me warm in my special spots. And wait, hold
Right.
on, calm down, you dirty pervert.
You can't make me.
But I can't make you calm down, or I can't make you a pervert, because I can do both.
Oh no! Oh, I am digging myself a bigger hole than I am prepared for.
But anyway, so we will be back again on Monday night for our regular Shooting the Shit episode at 9:30 p.m. And then, of course, we'll be back again next week for another rousing episode for Friday night at 8:30. Both of those times are Eastern time, which is, of course, the only true time zone, no matter who
Correct.
says Central.
Yeah, it's Central bullshit.
Central is just the fucking kid that got
They're
stuck
just
in
mad.
the middle of the back seat. I mean, I'm
Yeah,
just saying.
they're just mad. They're sitting on the hump
Stop
of the station
touching me.
wagon.
Stop
Like-
touching
It gave up on its dreams.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah, they could have made it all the way to California, but nope. They're like, nah, this is good enough. My feet hurt. I'm done.
Let me look out the window. I want to see the sun first, too. Shut up. But we'll be back. See you those times. Do keep in mind that August 21st, we're going to be doing that wonderful charity stream. Outside of that, I got nothing else. John will send you on your way to your little beach capade. It's fun that you're going to, whatever gay thing you're doing, I forget what LGBTQ convention you're going to.
LGBTQ plus.
Yes, you are
Come on.
plus. Well,
Right.
you're
That's where the
extra.
fun
I'll
stuff
just call
happens.
you extra. The fun stuff. The fun never stops.
Fun stuff, yeah.
All right. So, John, thanks for being here. Jessica, thank you so much for stopping by. We're going to get the hell out of here. Folks, have a wonderful night. Peace out to everyone.
Yep, see you guys.
The one in you.